America's economy is booming like never before. Since my election, we've added $10 trillion in wealth. The stock market is at an all-time high in history, and jobless claims are at a 50-year low. Our military will soon be more powerful than it has ever been before. In other words, the United States is stronger, safer, and a richer country than it was when I assumed office less than 2 years ago.
While President Trump was speaking to the United Nations this week about American exceptionalism, his predecessor, you remember that guy, President Barack Obama, was speaking in Oslo, Norway. There, Obama slammed the current policies of the United States and instead praised the left's new favorite paradise, Norway. That is the subject of tonight's Socialism Watch. President Obama explained that Norway is wonderful because they use, quote, political and social levers to achieve social democratic goals. He also praised Norway for its push for gender equality. Norway's laws require that 40% of non-executive board members be female. Norway has become the favorite democratic socialist test case for the American left. Venezuela, people are eating dogs in the streets. And Cuba's gone out of fashion. Turns out that when people are floating 1950s Chevys into the Atlantic Ocean, that's kind of a bad sign. These days, Norway is the Marxist paradise. There are just a few problems with this perspective. First off, Norway isn't socialist. It's a capitalist country burdened with massively expensive socialist redistribution programs. Norway ranks 23rd in the world in business climate, compared with the United States at 18th. As for Norway's social programs, its spending habits have been subsidized by an enormous oil slush fund and supremely high taxes. Here is the reality. Norway's successes, lower levels of income inequality, high levels of prosperity, those predate the rise of Norway's socialist infrastructure. They're actually a result of Nordic social capital, high levels of social trust, and cultural homogeneity. Presumably, President Obama would tell Americans that Scandinavia is a sort of heaven. In Scandinavia, he'd say, there's no poverty. Well, as Milton Friedman responded to a similar statement, in America, among Scandinavians, there's no poverty either. Social capital matters. Culture matters. That social capital is being actively undermined by Norway's generous welfare state, which actually pays people not to work. As The Economist wrote in 2015, quote, Norwegians have coined a verb, to nav, meaning to get money from NAV, the state's benefits agency. That welfare state policy also endangers immigrant social and economic mobility. As of 2017, the Norwegian Labor and Welfare Administration found that about half the total number of people in Norway receiving social welfare payments were immigrants. That report also stated that many of those immigrants were living in poverty-like conditions. No wonder Sylvie Listhaug, the Norwegian immigration minister, said this.
So what we see is that we have a big challenge now in integrate all the people that have been given permission to stay in Norway.
She added, it is not allowed to beat your children in Norway. If any politician in America said such a thing, President Obama would never, ever stop talking about systemic American xenophobia. What about Norway's supposed advantages in fighting gender equality? Norway ranks far behind countries like Russia, the United States, France, and Latvia in percentage of women who reach the top of the career ladder. High taxes in Norway have actually made it tough for women to leave the home and spend time in the workforce. Generous welfare means that often one parent actually stays at home. Considering what President Obama said earlier this year, he surely doesn't support that.
Women in particular, by the way, I want you to get more involved. Men have been getting on my nerves lately. Every day I read the newspaper and I just think, like, brothers, what's wrong with you guys? I mean, what's wrong with us? All right? I mean, we're violent, we're bullying, just not handling our business. So I think empowering more women on the continent, that ought to, right away is going to